Good afternoon. Welcome back. It is Friday, October 27th, 2023. We have a handful of birthdays here and a couple of events to talk about. So we'll start back in 1996 on this day at Phoenix. Bobby Hamilton wins his first Cup Series race driving for Petty Enterprises. This would be the first win for Petty Enterprises since 1983. And Bobby was driving that silver STP 25th anniversary paint job. Of course, that season, Hamilton had a bunch of throwback paint schemes that paid homage to some different STP cars that Richard ran over the years. We'll fast forward 1 year, 1997, at Rockingham. Once again, Bobby Hamilton for Petty Enterprises wins. This would be Hamilton's second career win. I don't know if I mentioned it. Phoenix was Hamilton's first career win. Rockingham in 97 was his second. So it's pretty cool to see him on the same date in consecutive years win his first and second career Cup races driving for Petty Enterprises. On our final event on this day in 2007 in the Busch Series, or Xfinity, or Nationwide, or whatever they was calling it in 07, at Memphis, David Rudiman wins his first and only race in that series. Of course, he was the top running, I don't even want to call him an Xfinity regular because he was running for Cup Rookie of the Year that year. So it was kind of a crazy time in the second tier series with a lot of drivers dipping down from the Cup Series. So we got 5 birthdays to talk about today. First, we're going to talk about no cards to speak of. Born on this day in 1949, sadly passed away in 1921. I grew up reading some of his columns locally here in the Indianapolis Star in the sports section, talking about racing. I believe he was fired from the Indianapolis Star somewhere about 97, 99, somewhere thereabouts, maybe a little bit later. I don't really recall the exact time, but I think he made some comments, and the Indianapolis Star said, "You're gone," and he ended up on Speed Channel and some other networks, but that would be Mr. Robin Miller. And originally when I first started reading his columns, I didn't like his take. Then when he got to TV, then I could hear him talk. Then I understood it more versus just reading it, and it didn't make a lot of sense. So I really liked Robin's takes on a lot of things after that. Born on this day in 1965, he's a former crew chief for, I believe he was at one time Kevin Harvick's crew chief. I know he's went in the Busch Series some. He's recently had an episode on the Scene Vault podcast a few months ago. Go back and give that a listen. That'd be Mr. Butch Hilton. So this is when he was obviously at Mark Martin's team at Roush. Not sure what role he played. I don't think he was a crew chief at that time. But super cool that Mr. Hilton does have a card. We'll go to 1966, born on this date. Former crew chief, former car owner. Kind of just hops around a little bit now wherever he's needed in the sport. I've kind of heard he's trying to get a team going again. Not real sure about that. I believe he was recently battling cancer, may have overcome that. Maybe somebody knows that. But that'd be Mr. Tommy Baldwin. Of course, crew chief for Ward Burton when Ward won the 2002 Daytona 500. He would later go on to own Tommy Baldwin Racing. There you see a nice little parallel. The number 36 car in the Cup Series. Started out as a start and park. Dave Blaney almost won the Daytona 500 with that team, with the Ollie sponsorship after the JPM jet dryer incident. I believe they did have a second car briefly that was kind of in a satellite program with Stuart Haas to keep owners' points so Danica could be in races the year before she actually went full-time. So there was a lot of number finagling there, but Tommy Baldwin did have it wasn't a top flight Cup car. It was definitely mid to back of the pack, but I think if the right sponsorship came along, that they really, really could have done some good things. Dave Blaney drove that car for a while. Reed Sorensen drove it a little bit. A few other drivers drove it. I believe maybe even Landon Castle. I don't know. Seems like he's been in about every ride out there at one point. But happy birthday to Mr. Tommy Baldwin. We have another one born on this date. I didn't see a death date, so that means he would be 85 today, born on this date in 1938. He is the winner of the inaugural Talladega 500, driving that Nichols Engineering number 99. But he wasn't supposed to drive that car. There's a lot written about the 1969 Talladega 500, so that's your homework assignment for the day. Go back and read why many top drivers were not in that race. That'd be Mr. Richard Brickhouse. So there's some information about that. There you see that lone win, 1969. A little bit of, says there at the bottom, he's a farmer today, but that was 30 years ago. Don't know, he's still farming. There's a nice look at his 70 Superbird. Maybe we'll learn who owned this one. Oops, we put it right side up. Talks about his first win there at Talladega, his only win. Bill Ellis would be the car owner here. If I remember correctly, somebody actually drove that 14 car, the Bill Ellis car, in Talladega that day. Because his car owner's like, no, go to that other car because you can win the race. And our final birthday, born on this day in 1941, sadly passed away in 2013. He's the oldest Cup Series Rookie of the Year at age 48 in 1989. In a ride that, originally he was only supposed to be in for a couple of races. That would be, and you know it, you know who it is, it's Dick Trickle. So we're going to talk about him real quick here. There you see the Phillips 66 car that he drove in 1990 in the first 4 races in 91. 91, he kind of hopped around from team to team before he finally landed in 1992, which you'll see here in a minute, with the Stavola Brothers team, but he didn't start the season there. Trickle's one of these anomalies that he was the cat that always landed on his feet. So he started the year for Raymock in 1992, got a top 5 in the Daytona 500. Rick Wilson was driving the Snickers Ford in that race, crashed out. They released Rick, and then Trickle took over and ended up finishing top 20 in points in that year. He's actually top 15 in points in 1989 with the Stavola brothers in his first go-round. So 1993, he goes back to Raymock after a year at Stavola. They start the year with Carolina Pottery as a sponsor. Then they pick up Factory Stores of America, which Carolina Pottery was a store in those outlet malls at the time. And then he's released about halfway through the season. And, of course, he bounces around from team to team during the end of the 93 season. I believe he drove the 41 car, the Larry Hedrick Mannheim Auctions car a few times. Can't remember the other rides that he had in 93, but he did hop around. 1994, he drove for Dean Myers Active Trucking Chevrolet. Don't have a uniform card of that, but 95, probably the best ride of his career, Budmore Engineering, but that didn't go the way that it probably should have. Only one top 10 in 1995. Talking about Trickle in 1995, listening to the Lake Speed on the Scene Vault podcast, Lake talked about working for Budmore, and he just said, and even Jeff Bodine said it too, way back from the early 90s driving for Budmore. Bud did not want to change. He said, this is always working, it's going to keep working, and literally Budmore Engineering got out-engineered in the long run. So Trickle was the last driver to ever score a top 10 for Budmore Engineering. Then in 1996, he started the year with the number 63 Pontiac, or says Ford here, but it may have been a Ford, I don't remember. Britton Schnell was the owner. Made the Daytona 500 and fell out early. Then, of course, in 96, he'd hop around from ride to ride. Loy Allen was hurt in the Rockingham race, so Trickle took over for them. That's kind of the era he was known as the super sub. He would just hop into anything. Then later in 97, Mike Wallace got released from the Heilig Myers car. Trickle ran that for a few years. Had several top 5 finishes. And there you see a few. I mean, I like how they just changed the uniform up, different patterns, different colors. Made it look clean. Of course, he drove for Jimmy Spencer, among other drivers, or among other owners in the Busch Series, has 2 wins to his credit there. Both came, I believe, with the 64 team. Well, one came with the 64 team of Dennis Shoemaker, and then the number 5 with Jimmy Spencer and Spencer Motor Ventures. So now we're going to get into some cars. There's the 66. There's the Spencer Motor Ventures car we just spoke of. So there's the 66 Trop Arctic car that he drove for Cale Yarborough. So that was 90 and part of 91. 92, there's a Snickers Ford. Then we go to 94. We talked about I don't have any of the Raymont cars available, but 94, he drove for Dean Myers. Pretty much unsponsored, sponsored by Active Trucking, which I believe was Myers' own business. So there you see it there. They did have ATS Wood recycling from time to time. Always liked this quality care car of Bud Moore's. Very, very nice looking car. There, I guess it was a Ford. I was thinking it was a Pontiac for some reason, but that's the 63 Britton Schnell owned Purina High Pro Ford. A couple different Heilig Myers cars here. So there's the one that he originally took over, and there's the one he ended with. After he left Junie Donlevy's team, kind of hopped around, drove for Dave Marcus a little bit, drove for a couple other teams here and there. but never really found the success that he had in the early to mid-90s. So anyway, that has been birthdays and events for this Friday. Make sure you come back in the morning. We'll have something to rip, and we'll have more birthdays and events because Fast Packs doesn't like to work weekends. So enjoy the rest of your Friday. We'll see you tomorrow.